Okay, so we found out in chapter 17 that Bruno and Mother and Gretel are moving back to Berlin. And Bruno didn't really know how to feel about it. Obviously, if this was the beginning of the story, we all know he'd be so excited because he hated it in his new house. But now he has his new friend, he doesn't feel like he wants to leave, I suppose. And it ended the last chapter saying that he was dreading having to tell Shmuel that this was the plan. So we're going to go on to chapter 18 today, which is called Thinking Up the Final Adventure. The day after Father told Bruno that he would be returning to Berlin soon. Oh, sorry, I'm going to start again. The day after Father told Bruno that he would be returning to Berlin soon, Shmuel didn't arrive at the fence as usual, nor did he show up the day after that. On the third day, when Bruno arrived, there was no one sitting cross-legged on the ground, and he waited for 10 minutes and was about to turn for home, extremely worried that he would have to leave Outwith without seeing his friend again, when a dot in the distance became a speck, and that became a blob, and that became a figure, and that in turn became the boy in the striped pyjamas. Bruno broke into a smile when he saw the figure coming towards him, and he sat down on the ground, taking the piece of bread and the apple he had smuggled with him out of his pocket to give to Shmuel. But even from a distance he could see that his friend looked even more unhappy than usual, and when he got to the fence he didn't reach for the food with his usual eagerness. "I thought you weren't coming any more," said Bruno. "I came yesterday and the day before, and you weren't here." "I'm sorry," said Shmuel. "Something happened." Bruno looked at him and narrowed his eyes, trying to guess what it might be. He wondered whether Shmuel had been told that he was going home, too. After all, coincidences like that do happen, such as the fact that Bruno and Shmuel have exactly the same birthday. "Well?" asked Bruno. "What is it?" "Papa," said Shmuel, "we can't find him." "Can't find him? That's very odd. You mean he's lost?" "I suppose so," said Shmuel. "He was here on Monday, and then he went on work duty with some other men, and none of them have come back." "And hasn't he written you a letter?" asked Bruno, "or left a note to say when he'll be coming back?" "No," said Shmuel. "How odd," said Bruno. "Have you looked for him?" he asked after a moment. "Of course I have," said Shmuel. "I did what you're always talking about. I did some exploration." "And there was no sign?" "None." "Well, that's very strange," said Bruno. "But I think there must be a simple explanation." "And what's that?" asked Shmuel. "I imagine the men were taken to work in another town, and they have to stay there for a few days until the work is done. And the post isn't very good here anyway. I'll expect he'll turn up one day soon." "I hope so," said Shmuel, who looked as if he was about to cry. "I don't know what we're supposed to do without him." "I could ask Father if you wanted me to," said Bruno, cautiously, hoping that Shmuel wouldn't say yes. "I don't think that would be a very good idea," said Shmuel, which, to Bruno's disappointment, was not a flat-out rejection of the offer. "Why not?" he asked. "Father is very knowledgeable about life on that side of the fence." "I don't think the soldiers like us," said Shmuel. "Well," he added with something close to a laugh as he could muster, "I know they don't like us. They hate us." Bruno sat back in surprise. "Oh, I'm sure they don't hate you," he said. "They do," said Shmuel, leaning forward, his eyes narrowing a little and his lips curling up a little in anger. "But that's all right, because I hate them too. I hate them," he repeated forcefully. "You don't hate Father, do you?" asked Bruno. Shmuel bit his lip and said nothing. He had seen Bruno's father on any number of occasions, and couldn't understand how such a man could have a son who was so friendly and kind. "Anyway," said Bruno after a suitable pause, not wishing to discuss the topic any further, "I have something to tell you." "You do?" asked Shmuel, looking up hopefully. "Yes, I'm going back to Berlin." Shmuel's mouth dropped open a little in surprise. "When?" he asked, his voice catching slightly in his throat as he did so. "Well, this is Thursday," said Bruno, "and we're leaving on Saturday, after lunch." "But for how long?" asked Shmuel. "I think it's forever," said Bruno. "Mother doesn't like it at Outwith. She says it's no place to bring up 2 children. So Father is staying here to work because the Fury has big things in mind for him. But the rest of us are going home." He had said the word home despite the fact that he wasn't sure where home was anymore. "So I won't see you again?" asked Shmuel. "Well, some day, yes," said Bruno. "You could come on a holiday to Berlin. Can't stay here forever after all, can you?" Shmuel shook his head. "I suppose not," he said sadly. "I won't have anyone to talk to any more when you're gone." he added. No, said Bruno. He wanted to add the words, I'll miss you too, Schmall, to the sentence, but he found that he was a little embarrassed to say them. So tomorrow will be the last time we see each other until then, he continued. We'll have to say our goodbyes. I'll try and bring you a special treat. Schmall nodded, but couldn't find any words to express his sorrow. I wish we'd got to play together, said Bruno, after a long pause. Just once. Just to remember. So do I, said Schmall. We've been talking to each other for more than a year, and we never got to play once. And do you know what else? He added. All this time I've been watching where you live from out of my bedroom window, and I've never seen for myself what it's like. You wouldn't like it, said Schmall. Yours is much nicer, he added. I still haven't seen it, said Bruno. Schmall thought for a few moments and then reached down and put his hand under the fence and lifted it a little, to the height of where a small boy, perhaps the size and shape of Bruno, could fit underneath. Well, said Schmall. Why don't you then? Bruno blinked and thought about it. I don't think I'd be allowed, he said doubtfully. Well, you're probably not allowed to come here and talk to me every day either, said Schmall. But you still do it, don't you? But if I was caught I'd be in trouble, said Bruno, who was sure mother and father would not approve. That's true, said Schmall, lowering the fence again, and looking at the ground with tears in his eyes. I suppose I'll see you tomorrow, to say goodbye then. Neither boy said anything for a moment. Suddenly Bruno had a brainwave. Unless, he began, thinking about it for a moment and allowing a plan to hatch in his head. He reached a hand up to his head and felt where his hair used to be, but now was just stubble that hadn't fully grown back. Don't you remember that you said I looked like you? He asked Schmall, since I had my head shaved. Only fatter, conceded Schmall. Well, if that's the case, said Bruno, and if I had a pair of striped pyjamas too, then I could come over on a visit and no one would be any the wiser. Schmall's face brightened up and he broke into a wide smile. Do you think so? He asked. Would you do it? Of course, said Bruno. It would be a great adventure. Our final adventure. I could do some exploring at last. And you could help me look for Papa, said Schmall. Why not? Said Bruno. We'll take a walk around and see whether we can find any evidence. That's always wise when you're exploring. The only problem is getting a spare pair of striped pyjamas. Schmall shook his head. That's all right, he said. There's a hut where they keep them. I can get some in my size and bring them with me. Then you can change, and we can look for Papa. Wonderful, said Bruno, caught up in the enthusiasm of the moment. Then it's a plan. We'll meet at the same time tomorrow, said Schmall. Don't be late this time, said Bruno, standing up and dusting himself down. And don't forget the striped pyjamas. Both boys went home in high spirits that afternoon. Bruno imagined a great adventure ahead, and finally an opportunity to see what was really on the other side of the fence before he went back to Berlin, not to mention getting in a little serious exploration as well. And Schmall saw a chance to get someone to help him in the search for his Papa. All in all, it seemed like a very sensible plan, and a good way to say goodbye.